Welcome to this lesson. I'm finding the surface area of prisms and pyramids. First thing we're going to talk about is vocabulary, and we're just going to go over the vocabulary term net. Remember, a net is the two-dimensional pattern that can fold to form a 3D figure. So when we give you those patterns and you fold them up and all of a sudden they make a three-dimensional shape, that paper that you folded up is called the net. Okay, so if you were to cut this out along the lines and fold it up, it would make a square pyramid because each of these triangles would fold up to meet at a point at the top and make a pyramid. All right, so when we're talking about surface area, so the word surface, so if you think about water, you have water and there's my water. So right here, that's the surface, the top. When you talk about the surface of a shape, we're talking about that outside piece of it that you can touch. So if you talk about like a cereal box, the surface area of a cereal box is all the pieces that are printed on, essentially. Okay, so to give you kind of an idea of what we're talking about with surface area, surface is the part that you can touch or see, and then area, of course, is the space inside of there. So surface area would be all of this, but now you're also talking about this panel and the panel in the back and the side, but we're not talking about what the box can hold. That's volume. We're just talking about if you were to make, so if this were a present, if you were to make the box to cover the present, how much wrap box or to wrap the box. Right, so when you look at this, the dimensions are important, but it's also important to be able to break it down into its net. Now, please remember, surface area is a very difficult concept. So we are going to go slow, and I do not expect you to have it mastered at the end of this. I do expect, however, that you give it a try and that we have a spot to start from. All right, so again, when you're drawing the net, draw the base. The base is 10 by 10, and then fold each of your walls down, kind of like you're peeling a banana. And then one of the walls has to be connected to the roof. Okay, so in this case, here's my base. So here's the bottom of the shape. And each of these are my walls. So like here is 1, 2, and I know it's going to keep going back and forth. I apologize. So 1 and 2. So here's 1, 2, and then of course this one is going to be congruent to this one, and 1 is going to be congruent to 4. And then my bases also have to be congruent because these are prisms. So we talked about how we refer to kind of like a house, so we have the base or the floor and the roof. Okay, so now the other piece that we're going to look at is actually writing in those dimensions. So I know that my base is 10 by 10. Okay, so I have my base, and that's 10 by 10. And I know that I have two bases that are congruent. Now, if I look here, I know that this is also 4 inches tall. So when I fold this up, each of these corners here has to meet up. And in order for my box to be correct, or for my house not to be lopsided, all of my walls have to be the same height. And my height in this case is where that 4 inches comes in. So it's this measurement right here goes with this one here. And you already know that the other dimension, that base, is 10 because part of your wall has to connect to your floor. So now you have this one that is 10 by 4. Well, in this case, since your base is 10 by 10, all 4 of these shapes are actually going to be congruent. So all 4 of your walls are 10 by 4. And you know that you have 4 walls. And then your roof, you already put in with your base. So here, again, this is where, like when we talked about composite figures, where I said, remember, you can write this in here and it helps you kind of break it down. So you know this is 100. Well, this should also be 100 because this is also 10 by 10. And this one is 10 by 4, so that's 40. And this one is 10 by 4, so that's 40. So while you're starting off, don't worry about diving in and being able to do it all right off the bat without having to write stuff down and put in dimensions. No, take your time, get it right, get to the point where you're understanding what's going on, and then it'll go quicker. So if you're confused, go in and write all your dimensions. So this is 10 by 4. Well, if this is 4, then this has to be 4 because they have to be equal. And you already know since this is 10, so if you look and you look at your lines that have to be congruent in terms of quadrilaterals, you know these lines have to be congruent. So you know that that's 10 by 10. You know these lines have to be congruent. And that's 10 and 10. And then to make sure that our box or our house is all good, you know, this has to be congruent to this, which also has to be congruent to this because these make up the corner of the wall. Okay, so then get my line tool here. So all of these have to be congruent. If this helps, use colored pencils to help you put in your numbers. Okay, so I know this one's 10, so I also know that this has to be 10. Well, then for side number 4, it's 10 by 4 because I know all of these have to be congruent. So now I have the 100 plus the other 100, so I have the base and the roof. And then I have the 4 walls that are 40, 40, 40, and 40. So I know I have 200 plus 160 because I know 40 plus 40 plus 40. That's just repeated addition, which is multiplication, or which we can write as multiplication. So 4 times 4 is 16, and then place a 0 at the end, and you get 160. And then if you add it together, you get an area of 180, and this is inches squared. Even though it's surface area, it's still labeled the exact same. You're just looking at more space. Now you're with surface area, you're finding the area, but the area of a 3D shape. When you find just the area, you're just looking at a 2-dimensional shape. Surface area, 3D, area, 2D. And that would be good to write down. Surface area, 3D, area, 2D. All right, we are going to move along a little bit faster here. If you feel comfortable with it, absolutely try it on your own. Check your answer. If you don't get it right, you need to go back and watch what we do to see if you can find your mistake. Okay? Make sure that you're going through it though. Don't just fly through, get it wrong, and then keep going. Make sure you're checking your work. Okay? And I'm actually going to, instead of just having it drawn already, I'm going to help you draw the net for this one. So I'm going to look at my base, and my base in this case is this right here, that rectangle right there, and I see that that's 12 by 5. Now I know it's 5 and not 2 because of where the 2 is. The 2 is right here, which is indicating that line, which is my height. It's not a part of that bottom base. Okay, so my first rectangle is going to be, and actually I don't want to do that and get you all jazzed up with colors, so let's do this, is going to be 12 by 5. Okay, and then now I actually have a wall here, and that's going to match the wall that's over here. Okay, because those have to be congruent. So I'm going to draw those walls. And they're here and here. And then now I have the short, tiny wall. Let's do purple. Purple sounds like fun. Here, here. Now notice you're seeing that the purple and the red overlap. That's where your purple and your red will overlap when it comes to your nets. So this purple that I'm drawing right here and then ending here is where they overlap. Okay, and then I have to have another base, and that can go off of any of these. So if I put it off of this one, there we go. If I put it off of this one, It's kind of like they would all fold up and then this would kind of come over the top, kind of like a toy box. Okay. So now I'm going to put in my dimensions. And I know that I said that this is 5 and this is 12. And then that my height, where this red is, that this is 2. Now I know, remember I said, see here is where the red and the purple combine. That's this piece right here. So both of these have to be 2. So this one is going to be 12 by 2, and this one is going to be 12 by 2. If this is 12, then this has to be 12. And then all of these here, so this has to be 2, and 2, and 2, and 2. Okay, so in here we have 12 by 5, 12 by 5, 2 by 5, and 2 by 5. Okay, so I have these two, which give me 60 times 2, because I have two that are the same size, so that's 120. And then I have these two, and actually let's do it in a different color, circle it, which give me 10, but there's 2 of them, so that gives me 20. And then I also have these two, which give me 24 times 2, which gives me 48. So I have to look here now too. So I have 2, 4, 6 sides or faces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I know I've got all of my measurements, and now I can go ahead and add, and I get 8, 4, 6, 8. I get an answer of 188 square inches. All right, again, draw your net. So my bottom, here's my base. My base is 7 by 7. So this is a square pyramid. Here's my base. Notice the 8, the line for the 8 is pointing to the dotted line, so we know that that's the height of one of the triangles. So let's first draw our square. And we know that our square, we said, is 7 by 7. And then we have triangles coming off, and we know that we have to have 4 triangles. So 1, and then here's another one, 2, here's another one, 3, and then there's one in the back, which is 4. Okay, so we have to draw each of those. We know the base of each of those has to be, and this is going to be harder for me to draw, so give me a minute here. There we go. We know that each of those has to have a base that's the same as the square because of the fact that it's a pyramid, and so the bases have to work so that way they fit and we can form that closed three-dimensional figure. And then we also know that the height of all the triangles has to be the same, because otherwise you have a pyramid that has a little pointy spot sticking out the top, and we don't want that. We want everything to meet up perfectly. So since we can see that the height there we go. Since we can see that the height here is 8, we know that the height of each triangle is also 8. All right, so here I'm going to do the triangles. We have 4 of them times, the formula is 1/2 the base times the height. And I'm multiplying it by 4 because there's 4 of them. So I get 4 times. I'm going to move this around and do 1/2 times 8 first, because that's easier than taking 1/2 of 7. And I can do that because it's multiplication. So I have 4 times 7. So I have 4 times 28. And 4 times 28, well, 8 times 4 is 32. Carry the 3, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11. But now that's just my triangles. Now I also have to do my square, which I know is 7 by 7, which is 49. So now I have to take my 112, which is the area of all my triangles, plus 49, which is the area of all of my, of my base, and add them, and I should get 161 square, and this should be square feet, not square inches. Okay, so square feet. Okay, again, this is going to take some getting used to, and you have to take your time and draw your pictures. Okay, trust me, drawing the pictures is going to make it easier for you. So now, if you look, you have 3 problems. One of them is this triangular prism. Now remember, this is a prism, so you only have 2 triangular sides. And if it helps, draw in your lines here and here to help you see that that's your triangle. But remember, your walls and your bases are all going to be congruent. Take your time, do your best, come back with an answer. And as always, if you have any questions, be sure to email me or write them down so we can go over them in class.